Have you ever looked at something you keep postponing and thought, why am I so lazy? Why can't I just get on with it? Why do I keep avoiding something I say I want? And then, instead of beginning, you criticize yourself. You tell yourself that you lack discipline, that you are wasting time, that maybe you do not want it badly enough. But what if laziness is not the real problem? What if the real problem is fear? Week 9 of The Artist's Way asks us to stop using harsh and inaccurate names for our creative struggles. Because when we call fear laziness, we do not motivate ourselves, we shame ourselves. And shame rarely helps anyone create. Hi, I'm Leslie. Over the past year, I've been guiding deep dive sessions into the artist's way, helping people move through different stages of creative recovery. And week 9 is called Recovering a Sense of Compassion. This is an important week because it brings us face to face with the emotional blocks that may still be operating beneath our procrastination, perfectionism, self sabotage, and avoidance. It asks us to stop attacking the block part of ourselves and begin understanding it. Because the part of you that will not begin may not need more pressure. It may need reassurance. It may need encouragement. It may need permission to start small. And it may need compassion. This week explores four major themes: fear, enthusiasm, creative U turns, and blasting through blocks. Let's begin with fear. Julia Cameron makes a very important distinction. Blocked artists are not lazy, they are blocked. And those are not the same thing. A blocked person may appear inactive from the outside, but internally, they may be using enormous amounts of energy. Energy spent worrying, comparing, regretting, doubting, resenting, imagining failure, imagining success, imagining what other people might think, rehearsing everything that could go wrong. That is not laziness, that is fear. And when fear is called laziness, we become cruel towards ourselves. We say, just do it. Stop making excuses. Why are you like this? But fear does not respond well to being shouted at. It usually becomes stronger. Week 9 asks us to use more accurate language. Instead of saying, I'm lazy, try saying, I'm afraid. That may sound simple, but it changes everything. Because laziness, it sounds like a character defect. Fear, it sounds like something that can be understood, that can be supported. Fear may take many forms: fear of failing, fear of being judged, of not finishing, fear of discovering that the work is not good as we hoped, fear of discovering that it is good, fear of being seen, fear of changing, fear of beginning at all. And for many people, creativity also carries an older fear: the fear of separating from the expectations of family, the fear of disappointing someone, the fear of becoming someone different, the fear that following a creative desire may make us less acceptable to the people we love. This is why many blocked artists, they place an impossible condition on themselves. They tell themselves, if I'm going to do this, I must be brilliant. If I'm going to disappoint people, I must at least be successful. If I'm going to call myself an artist, I must prove that I deserve the title. And the pressure to be great makes it almost impossible to begin. The need to create a great work can prevent us from creating any work. So the answer is not to demand more from yourself. The answer is to begin smaller, much, much smaller. Instead of writing the novel, write one page. Instead of planning the exhibition, make one sketch. Instead of imagining the entire course, just draft one lesson. Instead of worrying whether the project will succeed, take one small action that makes the project real. Fear, it grows when the task feels enormous. Compassion, it reduces the task to something that's manageable. So here's the first reflection for this week. Where have I been calling myself lazy when I am actually afraid? What am I afraid might happen if I begin? And what is one smaller step that I could take? The second theme of this chapter is enthusiasm. Many people believe that artists succeed because they are extremely disciplined. And discipline can be useful. It can help us form routines. It can help us keep appointments with ourselves. But discipline alone is not enough because discipline is often powered by force, by pressure, by self control, by the feeling that we have to make ourselves do the work. This may work for a while, but it can become exhausting. Julia suggests that over time, an artist needs enthusiasm more than discipline. Enthusiasm, it's a different kind of energy. It's not, I must do this. It is, I get to do this. I get to do this. And that difference matters because creativity, it grows through curiosity, through play, through interest, through affection, not only through willpower. Think about the difference between these two approaches. The first says, at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, I must sit at my desk and produce something useful. The second says, at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going to meet my creative self and we'll see what happens. Now, one feels like punishment, the other feels like an invitation. Week 9 reminds us that the artist within us behaves more like a child than a soldier. A child is drawn by color, texture, music, curiosity, mystery, play. A child does not need an empty, severe, perfect workspace. A child needs something that's interesting enough to engage with. So perhaps your creative space, it does not need to look more professional. Perhaps it needs to feel more alive. Maybe it needs a plant, a strange object, a favorite pen, a candle, music, photographs, color, something, anything that reminds you that creativity is not only work, it is also play. This does not mean the work is never difficult. It simply means that difficult is not the whole story. If every creative session feels like punishment, your creative self will begin avoiding. So ask yourself, how could I make the process more inviting? How could I make it easier to return? How could I bring curiosity back into the work? The goal is not to become less serious about creativity. It is to become less grim. Because a sustainable creative life requires a source of energy that's deeper than pressure. that's deeper than pressure. So here's the second reflection. Where has creativity become duty instead of play? What helps me feel genuinely interested and alive? And what could change in my environment or in my routine to make creating more inviting? The third major theme is creative U turns. A creative U turn is what happens when we begin moving forward and then suddenly we turn away. This often happens after progress, not only after failure. Sometimes we receive an opportunity, someone takes an interest in our work, we complete a project, we receive encouragement, we begin gaining momentum, and then something in us becomes frightened. We delay, we lose interest, we do not answer that email, we do not make revisions, we do not follow up, we create an unnecessary conflict, or we abandon the work. We tell ourselves, it doesn't really matter. It was not that interesting anyway, or it was not good enough. Or maybe we tell ourselves, other people are much further ahead. It's going to take me a long time to catch up. But underneath that sudden indifference is often fear. The possibility has become real, and real possibility is more frightening than fantasy. When a dream is only imagined, it's safe. Once someone says yes, the dream asks something from us. It asks us to show up, to continue, to become more visible to this disappointment, to this success. And this is where many people turn back. Julia Cameron's she calls these moments creative U-turns. And the first step in recovering from them is not self-punishment. It's recognition. You need to be able to say, yes, I did that. I was frightened. I moved away from something that I wanted, and I can spend some time understanding why. Compassion does not mean pretending the U turn did not matter. It means refusing to add more shame to the fear that caused it. Because shame does not help us turn around again. What helps us turn around is support. And Julia uses the image of a young, nervous horse. A horse may be talented, but it is inexperienced. It may become frightened by a jump. It may pull away. It may circle the field. It may need reassurance before trying again. Your creative self may be the same. It may not need to be forced over the obstacle, but it may need to approach it differently. It may need another attempt. It may need guidance from someone who has done it before. And that brings us to one of the most practical lessons in this chapter. Ask for help. If you are afraid of approaching an agent, speak to someone who already has one. If you are struggling with a rewrite, ask someone who has completed one. If criticism has wounded you, speak to someone who has recovered from criticism. If you do not know what the next step is, find someone who's a little further along the road. The ego, our ego, it wants to appear self sufficient. It wants to solve everything alone. But creativity, it grows through support. So, if you recognize a creative U turn, or rather at some point you will recognize a creative U turn, and at that point, ask, where did I turn away? What frightened me? What help do I need to approach this again? The goal is not to guarantee that you will never retreat because that's going to keep happening. That's part of the journey. The goal is to simply become better at returning. So here's the third reflection. What opportunity or project have you turned away from? What fear appeared when the possibility became real? And who could help me take the next step? Who could help me take the next step? The final major theme is blasting through blocks. And this section is very practical. Julia suggests that creative blocks are often less mysterious than we can imagine, or rather, than we imagine. They are frequently made up of unspoken resentment, fear, resistance, and those hidden benefits we receive from not doing the work. Before beginning a project or when a project becomes stuck, we can ask ourselves a series of honest questions. The first question is, what do I resent about this project? What do I resent about this project? Maybe you resent the person you're doing it for. Maybe you resent the deadline. Maybe you resent that you are not the first choice. Or maybe you resent that the work is not being properly valued. Or maybe the fact that the project is harder than you expected. The resentment, it may seem petty, but that does not mean it is irrelevant. If the resentment is present, it's probably already affecting the work. Putting it on the page, it helps take away some of its power. The second question, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? Be specific. I'm afraid that the work will be bad. I'm afraid I will not finish. I'm afraid I will finish and no one will care. I'm afraid people will criticize it or people will like it and expect more. I'm afraid I have nothing original to say. I'm afraid I'm wasting my time. These fears, they may contradict one another. That's normal. Fear does not have to be logical to create resistance. The third question, have I left anything out? Is there a smaller fear that I'm embarrassed to admit? Is there anger that feels childish? Is there something I think I should be above? Get it onto the page. Get it onto the page. The fourth question, what do I gain from not doing the work? An uncomfortable question. What do I gain from not doing the work? This question can be very revealing. If I do not finish, no one can reject it. If I do not share the work, no one can judge it. If I remain blocked, I can continue believing that I might be brilliant. If I do not try, I do not have to discover what I still need to learn. If I stay stuck, I can criticize other people instead of risking being criticized myself. There's often a protective payoff that's hidden inside the block. Once we see that payoff, we have more choice. And then Julia offers a simple agreement. You take care of the quantity and let the creative process take care of the quality. Your responsibility is to show up, write the pages, make the sketch, do the rehearsal, take the photograph, make the attempt. Quality is not always something you can force in advance, but quantity, it gives quality a chance to emerge. Quantity gives quality a chance to emerge. So instead of asking, is this good enough? Ask yourself, did I show up? Did I continue? Did I make something today? This is a far more useful measure, a far more useful measure. So here's the final reflection. What resentment is attached to the work? What am I afraid of? What do I gain by remaining blocked? And what small amount of work can I complete without judging its quality? Week 9 is ultimately about learning to treat ourselves differently, not as a problem to be fixed, not as a lazy person who needs to be pushed harder, but as someone who may have been frightened, who may have been discouraged, or who may have been wounded, someone who still wants to create, someone who needs support, someone who can begin again. Compassion is not indulgence. It is not making excuses. It is creating the emotional safety that allows us to move. It helps us name fear accurately. It helps us bring play back into the process. It helps us recover from those creative U turns. And it helps us understand what is actually beneath the block. So, if you take one thing, just one thing from week 9, let it be this: stop yelling at the frightened part of you. Call fear by its right name and then offer yourself one small, loving step forward. Thank you for joining me for week 9 of The Artist's Way. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where have you been calling yourself lazy when you may actually be afraid? And what is one small step you can take with greater compassion? In the next video, we will move into week 10, recovering a sense of protection. And I'll see you there.